What's good? It's your boy Donnie and What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Donnie, and it's another reaction. Uh, I wanted to watch this timeline of 1970. Hey, real talk. I was watching this on stream. I started with the 80s all the way to the 90s, and they just now putting up the 70s. So instead of watching it on stream, I'm gonna watch it on YouTube, make a YouTube video out of it, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. If you do like what you see here, please make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I really do appreciate it. And also, I might be slurring my words, so I've been drinking. But let's get to the reaction. I like this. I seen the 80s, but so this is my first time ever seeing the 70s. So like I said, I kind of wanted to make a video out of it. So let's get it.
1970. The year that brought the swinging 60s to a close was about as harsh a morning after as the Poseidon adventure, although that was still a few years away. After instilling the nation with the blind optimism of flower power and Beatlemania, the back half of the 1960s came crashing down with the assassinations of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr., the beginning of the Vietnam War, and the Manson family.
Go ride a horse.
1970 rode that bleak wave into a decade marked by geopolitical unrest, gas shortages, natural disasters, serial killers, terrorism, and one of the biggest scandals in 20th century American politics.
The
And
70s.
also a bunch of really groovy movies. Almost too many, really.
Real talk, the 70s seemed like they was wild out there.
Imagine quite a bit.
We're going to talk about the news, culture, sports, and entertainment, and all that was weird in the 70s. This is Timeline. Get ready for some forgettable Beatles solo albums, because this one is all about 1970. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel, and let us know in the comments below your favorite 70s memory. Now, are you
Memory.
ready to boogie down?
Not me, buddy.
Despite positive changes brought about by the civil rights movement and a national excitement over the possibilities of space exploration following Neil Armstrong's historic first steps on the moon, the decade began on uncertain ground. Two-thirds of Americans disapproved of the U.S.'s involvement in the Vietnam War. The year ahead would see the continued proliferation of nuclear weapons, a shocking display of state violence, an infamous space disaster that nearly ended in tragedy, and the dissolution of one of the most influential bands of all time. But it wasn't all bad.
The Hollywood coroner says an overdose of narcotics is responsible for the death of the well-known rock singer Janis Joplin.
Okay, so it was mostly bad. Some years just start out in desperate need of a do-over and never fully recover.
When we get started.
When do we get started?
At TimeLine.
This is 1970.
Sayonara, mister.
The Who's drummer and resident party animal Keith Moon kicked off the decade by drunkenly running over his own chauffeur while trying to escape an unruly mob of skinheads outside a pub in London. The group surrounded Moon's Bentley and began pelting it, at which point Moon's driver, Neil Boland, climbed out to confront them. The skinheads pummeled Boland mercilessly, and a terrified Moon grabbed the wheel and took off. This was ultimately ruled an accident, and Moon was cleared of any wrongdoing, although it haunted the drummer for the rest of his life.
Where are you?
All my
Still
children.
didn't answer my question.
Which was?
You were sort of lost in thought when I came in. What about?
Maybe I was trying to be one of your grandmother's gypsies. Read the future in the flames.
4 months
Oh.
after leading a military coup against
No.
Libya's King Idris, Muammar al-Gaddafi is declared premier of Libya by the government he just created. Funny how that works out. Gaddafi was an army captain and fierce Arab nationalist who sought to purge Libya of Western influence, removing U.S. and British military bases from the country, and deporting Libyans with Italian and Jewish heritage within his first year of power. The controversial dictator remained in power for just over 40 years, until he would be captured and killed by members of Libya's National Liberation Army on October 20th, 2011, during the First Libyan Civil War. It's safe to say his popularity rating had dropped some in the intervening years.
This isn't a hospital! It's an insane to let guys out.
What do you want me to do?
Put them under arrest. See what a court-martial thinks of that drunken hooliganism.
Famed folk pop duo
Man,
Simon and
okay.
Garfunkel released their final studio album, Bridge Over Troubled Water, on January 26th before splitting up for good later that year. Their swan song, considered by many to be the pair's best, went on to become one of the best-selling albums of all time, with over 25 million copies sold worldwide. That's a whole lot of wax. Speaking of landmark albums, the Jackson 5's first single, I Want You Back, reached the #1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100 on January 31st, fresh off their history-making appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show in December.
Here's the youthful Jackson 5, opening with a medley of their hits that have sold over 1 million.
The group released 3 other #1 singles that year, ABC, The Love You Save, and I'll Be There, making them the first recording artists in history to have their first 4 singles reach the top spot. Flash forward to October 7th, 1971, when the group's magnetic lead singer, Michael Jackson, released his first single as a solo artist, Got to Be There, when he was just 13 years old.
We'll be right back.
70s.
Remember that no bastard ever won war by dying for his country. He won it by making the other poor dumb bastard die for his country.
The legendary heavy metal band Black Sabbath released their self-titled debut album on February 13th, introducing the world to their colorful frontman, Ozzy Osbourne, for the first time.
We like the name Black Sabbath, so
We just like the name, you know.
Why did you pick the name in the first place?
why did the Beatles pick the Beatles, you know? Nobody knows.
According to the band's guitarist, Tony Iommi, the album was recorded in one day during a single 12-hour session. Black Sabbath's debut is widely considered to be the first heavy metal album, and one of the most influential records of the 20th century. The Chicago 7, the name given to the men standing trial for allegedly inciting a riot during anti-Vietnam protests at the Democratic National Convention in August of 1968, were found innocent on charges of conspiracy on February 18th. Rennie Davis, David Dellinger, John Froines, Tom Hayden, Abby Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, and Lee Weiner were all acquitted.
The judge knows that the only one who's in contempt of his court is Julius Hoffman.
We're going to have demonstrations at local courts across this country.
The last witness was a rebuttal to Rennie's testimony. It was hysterical. He didn't see any defendant there. He didn't see anybody on a bullhorn yelling, "Kill a pig." Nothing. Where's their case? I seen more evidence in a case of scotch.
Davis, Dellinger, Hayden, Hoffman, and Rubin were convicted of crossing state lines to start a riot, but those convictions, along with several others for contempt of court, were eventually reversed. In late March, the United States detonated its 500th nuclear device since dropping atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945 as part of its ongoing nuclear testing program. America would set off more than 1,000 nuclear explosions before a moratorium was placed on testing by President George H.W. Bush. In October 2nd, 1992, President Clinton extended the moratorium and signed the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty in 1996.
The treaty will constrain any nation from improving its existing nuclear arsenal and end the development of advanced nuclear weapons and help to stop their spread.
The treaty has yet to be ratified by Congress. Not that we're going to start setting off nukes again, we just like to keep our options open. At the end of March, jazz legend Miles Davis released his 27th studio album, Bitches Brew. The album would go on to become Davis's highest charting, topping out at number 35, and would earn him the first gold record of his career. To date, Bitches Brew is regarded as one of the best jazz albums ever recorded. On April 1st, President Richard Nixon signed a bill banning cigarette advertising on radio and television.
Hey, how would
Really?
you have a phone like that?
Great, then I can see you all the time.
Don't settle for some of the taste, some of the time. Viceroy gives you all the taste, all the time.
To the woe of the tobacco industry, this was not an April Fool's joke.
Philip Morris Company has bought all commercial time on the first half hour of all the network talk shows tonight.
That is the last half hour on which it is legal to sell cigarettes on radio or television in the United States. It marks, as we like to say, the end of an era.
Regulation of the tobacco industry had ramped up following increasingly alarming health studies linking smoking to cancer, heart disease, and birth defects, including a report by the Surgeon General linking smoking to low birth weight. The last televised cigarette ad ran on January 1st, 1971 at 11:50 p.m. during The Johnny Carson Show. The hearts of millions of Beatlemaniacs around the world were shattered on April 10th when Paul McCartney officially announced his departure from the Beatles. In the spirit of the well-known tensions that had steadily developed between the bandmates, McCartney revealed he would no longer be working with the rest of the Fab Four in a press release promoting the impending release of his solo album, McCartney. The release took the form of a fictional Q&A, featuring questions reportedly written mostly by Sir Paul himself. Despite the fact that neither the general public nor the rest of the Beatles themselves initially knew how seriously to take McCartney's announcement, it turned out to be the real deal. The band never reunited. Keeping it real classy, Sir Paul. One day later, Apollo 13 embarked on its ill-fated voyage to the moon. 2 days into the mission, an oxygen tank at the command module failed, forcing the crew, Jim Lovell, Fred Hayes, and Jack Swigert, to abandon their planned lunar landing.
Houston, we've had a problem.
Over the next 3 days, the entire nation held its breath as NASA Mission Control worked tirelessly in a race against time to bring the 3 astronauts home. The crew finally returned safely to Earth, thanks to some DIY ingenuity that would have made MacGyver proud.
The men of Apollo 13 epitomize the character that accepts danger and surmounts it. Theirs is the spirit that built America.
Flash forward to June 30th, 1995, when director Ron Howard's blockbuster film about the unforgettable mission was released in theaters.
Houston, we have a problem.
The appropriately titled Apollo 13 went on to become the second highest grossing movie of 1995 and was nominated for 9 Oscars.
We'll be right back.
Introducing the G.I. Joe Space-O-Matic. Space-O-Matic, the futuristic space vehicle you program yourself. Program it to lift, or to scoop, or use
Program
a
it.
pickup.
What's this? Way to go, Joe.
G.I. Joe Space-O-Matic from Hasbro.
Moving into May, America watched in horror as 28 National Guardsmen fired into a crowd of unarmed students at Ohio's Kent State University, killing 4 and wounding 9 others, leaving 1 victim permanently paralyzed.
Leave this area immediately.
The National Guard had been deployed 2 days earlier in response to escalating student protests against the Vietnam War. The Guardsmen, armed with tear gas and bayoneted rifles, first ordered the demonstrators to disperse before firing into the crowd without warning. The event sparked widespread outrage and demonstrations on college campuses across America. Ultimately, a federal court dropped all charges against the National Guard troops responsible for the shootings. The Beatles' final studio album, Let It Be,
What the
was released.
fuck? They shot into a group of students. Nobody got in trouble for it. Nobody got held accountable for it. That's insane. That is crazy.
On May 8th, just a few weeks after the news of their unofficial official breakup left millions of fans confused. The album, released alongside a documentary film of the same name, was met with an equally mild response, earning the group some of the most mediocre reviews of their career. Despite its lukewarm initial reception, Let It Be won the Fab Four an Academy Award for Best Original Song Score the following year.
On their behalf, thank you very much.
And has since been reappraised by fans and critics alike as the Beatles' most underrated album. The band's tense rehearsal sessions were captured on film for the documentary, and later repurposed by none other than Peter Jackson in an 8-hour documentary series about the creation of the album, titled The Beatles. Get back. Leave it to Peter Jackson to turn an 80-minute movie into an epic. Maybe one day he can do the reverse to those Hobbit movies. Staying with music, founding Fleetwood Mac guitarist Peter Green walked away from the band following a final performance on May 20th to join a German commune he discovered a few months earlier. Green had been invited to a party at the commune by model and actress Uschi Obermeier. Green decided he didn't want to leave. Bandmate Mick Fleetwood and two Fleetwood Mac roadies had to literally drag him away to complete the rest of their European tour.
John is, to this day, absolutely furious with these people. He called them the German jet set, and they captured Peter completely.
Hey, it was the 70s. You might wander off and join a cult was just an occupational hazard for musicians. In fact...
Facts. Why in the 70s all these cults was like popping and popular? Like, what's up with cults, bruh, in the 70s?
Flash forward to March of 1971, when guitarist Jeremy Spencer went out to get a magazine while Fleetwood Mac was in California to play a series of shows at the Whiskey A Go-Go and never returned. Spencer left to join the infamous Children of God cult, now known as the Family International. He remains a member to this day. That's one way to avoid the drama of making rumors.
That is crazy. They say he's still a member to this day. That is crazy.
Some kid that fixes bicycles. I know every inch of the 707. Take the wings off this and you could use it as a tank. This plane is built to withstand anything, except a bad pilot.
All right, hold it. This kind of talk will get us nowhere.
In late May, Detroit Tigers outfielder Al Kaline suffered one of sport's most bizarre injuries during a game against the Milwaukee Brewers. While running to catch a fly ball, Kaline collided with teammate Jim Northrup so violently that he actually swallowed his tongue. Kaline collapsed on the field, unable to breathe. His teeth were clenched so tightly that Milwaukee's bullpen coach, Jackie Moore, was unable to force his mouth open. Luckily, left fielder and renowned slugger Willie Horton had the Hulk strength necessary to pry Kaline's jaws open and clear his airway, leaving Horton with scars on his hand. Kaline ultimately only missed one game, and Horton was presented with a Michigan Heart Association award for his actions.
We'll be right back.
Come on, it's the Pepsi way. Come on and have a Pepsi day. You found a place to celebrate. Pepsi's cold food is great.
The 70s.
Come on, have a Pepsi day. You're the Pepsi generation. Pepsi day.
Have a Pepsi day. Have a Pepsi day.
UCLA fired assistant professor of philosophy Angela Davis for the second time. This firing was for her use of inflammatory language in speeches about the handling of the People's Park rally the previous summer, in which she characterized the police as pigs and the university regents as killers and murderers.
3 weeks ago, there were pigs on the campus attacking everybody they saw.
The People's Park rally deviated from its topic of the Arab-Israeli conflict into a protest, which turned into a park takeover, in which police fired shotguns into crowds of demonstrators, ending the life of one and injuring dozens more. The college had previously terminated Davis's employment back in September of 1969 because she was a member of the Communist Party. Davis was also an activist and member of the Black Panthers, which will matter when we fast forward to October 13th, 1970, when Davis was arrested after a 2-month manhunt for her connection to the Marin County Civic Center domestic terrorist attack on August 7th. Using 3 guns owned by Davis, one of which was a shotgun she had purchased just 2 days before, 4 men took 5 hostages from a courtroom, including Superior Court Judge Harold Haley. They demanded the release of 3 black inmates who were on trial for the stabbing of a white prison guard. 3 of the kidnappers and the judge were killed. Davis spent 16 months in prison awaiting her trial, but was eventually acquitted of any crime. She continues her activism to this day.
Here we go with the top 40 hits in the nation this week on American Top 40. This is Casey Kasem in Hollywood.
The syndicated radio countdown show American Top 40 with Casey Kasem aired its first episode on the 4th of July. A show in which Kasem counted down the top 40 Billboard singles of the week became a staple of American culture for the next several decades.
All right, all you dream analysts, turn up the sound. Here's Eric Burden with his new group called War, and the song is called Spill the Wine.
Kasem's sonorous voice is what we think of when we hear the words Top 40 DJ. He walked so Carson Daly and Ryan Seacrest could run. Incidentally, Seacrest is the current host of American Top 40, which he took over from a retiring Kasem in 2004. In addition to the radio, you might recognize Kasem as the original voice of Shaggy on Scooby-Doo.
I'm so scared. I wish I had a ham sandwich to calm my nerves.
A character he played for roughly 40 years. A week later, Norwegian
40
ethnologist
years.
Thor Heyerdahl.
I ain't gonna lie. Scooby-Doo was the Simpsons, bruh. Like, I remember when I was young, bro, Scooby Doo, bro, always had new episodes. They remind me of straight up The Simpsons. Like this, Scooby Doo been running for
Began
forever.
his trip across the Atlantic, sailing from Morocco to Barbados in a raft in 57 days. The trip was an effort to prove Heyerdahl's theory that the ancient Egyptians and other ancient Mediterranean civilizations actually sailed to America and exchanged trade and culture with the people in Central and South America. Heyerdahl's raft, the Ra II, was constructed of papyrus and modeled after Egyptian sailing vessels of the period. Despite successfully completing the 4,000-mile journey, his theory is still not accepted by most anthropologists.
Well, several things have been proven. One of them is definitely that a papyrus vessel is seaworthy.
You go on a 57-day raft trip and you get nothing? That's gotta sting. Moving into September, legendary football coach Vince Lombardi passed away at age 57.
Sir Vincent Lombardi,
He died in
coach and
1970.
executive vice president of the Washington Redskins, died at 7:12 a.m. today at Georgetown University Hospital.
Lombardi led the Green Bay Packers to 5 NFL championships, including the first 2 Super Bowls. After his death, the Super Bowl trophy was renamed the Vince Lombardi Trophy. To this day, Lombardi is regarded as the greatest coach in the history of the NFL.
Most times, the streets are named after the deceased. I just want you to know I'm not dead.
The music world was shocked when Jimi Hendrix, one of rock's most towering icons, died suddenly on September 18th at the age of 27.
During his short career, Hendrix flailed his electric guitar into some of the most unusual sounds of an unusual music.
An astonishing performer whose on-stage gyrations could make Elvis Presley look like a PE teacher.
Sadly, Hendrix wouldn't be the only 27-year-old talent
He's-
that would
you
be
heard
lost
it.
in 1970.
He said-
Just a- Hendrix wouldn't be the only
His on-stage gyrations could make Elvis Presley look like a PE teacher.
Sadly, Hendrix wouldn't be the only 27-year-old talent that would be lost in 1970. Just a few weeks later, rock legend Janis Joplin passed on October 4th at the age of 27. Joplin was in Los Angeles recording her upcoming album.
No, facts. I never heard a Janis Joplin song. To be honest, I never heard one of her songs.
Pearl, when she was found unresponsive in her hotel room after missing a recording session. The passing of both Hendrix and Joplin, coupled with the deaths of blues musician Alan Blind Owl Wilson earlier that September and Rolling Stones guitarist Brian Jones a few years earlier, marked the unofficial beginning of the infamous 27 Club. In September, some now iconic TV shows debuted.
So, here I am in Minneapolis. New life, new job. Well, not a new job yet. First, I had to go on an interview at a local TV station.
The job that's open is associate producer.
I like it. Associate producer.
Mary's making new friends. Make yourself at home on Tuesday.
I painted this whole room without bothering you. It won't cost me a cent. I'm going to sell the old furniture to buy new. You won't touch anything in my room? Have I ever? You won't be
Hey kids, Hollywood Boulevard. If anyone had told me 4 months ago that I'd be driving an old school bus filled with my 5 children and a large dog through Hollywood, I'd have thought they were crazy.
Ladies and gentlemen, America's latest success story, the Partridge Family.
The Doors frontman Jim Morrison was convicted of indecent exposure and profanity on September 20th. The charges stemmed from a 1969 concert in Miami, during which Morrison allegedly used some swear words and may or may not have dropped his pants. Morrison was sentenced to 6 months in jail and a $500 fine for the scandalous incident. To this day, Doors bandmates maintain Morrison's pants stayed on.
This is PBS, the Public Broadcasting Service.
PBS began operations as a U.S. television network on the 5th. The nonprofit organization, dedicated to high-quality educational programming,
That makes
has been
sense.
the broadcast home of beloved children's shows like Sesame Street,
Yeah.
Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and The Magic School Bus, as well as stuffier grown-up shows like Masterpiece Theater and Downton Abbey, which have way less puppets. Gary Trudeau's satirical political comic strip Doonesbury made its debut in newspapers on October 26th. The scathingly topical cartoon became the first daily comic strip to win a Pulitzer Prize for the strip titled Stonewall, published on August 12, 1974, that took aim at the then unfolding Watergate scandal. Although Doonesbury has gone on several hiatuses, Trudeau continues to publish new strips half a century later, continuing to prove that comic strips don't have to be funny. On November 4th, the nation was stunned by the discovery of Genie, a 13-year-old girl who had grown up in almost total isolation.
Mr. Wiley, why did you keep your daughter in a room?
Mr. Wiley has no comment.
The abuse was so severe that Jeannie had no concept of language. When her mother finally got her out of the house, Jeannie's developmental age was similar to that of an infant's. Jeannie became a ward of the state, and although her case initially received widespread attention, she never made a significant recovery, and her current whereabouts are unknown. Tragedy struck again on November 14th when a jet carrying the Marshall University football team crashed in
There's a movie on
West
there.
Virginia. The team had been returning from a loss to East Carolina University when the plane struck some trees during its approach to the tri-state airport and crashed. Everyone on board perished, including 37 players, the coach, and 25 team boosters. The devastating loss nearly resulted in Marshall suspending its football program indefinitely. Flash forward to December 22nd, 2006, when the film We Are Marshall debuted. The movie stars Matthew McConaughey and a pre-MCU Anthony Mackie. Chicanery was up in the
The movie was about what happened afterwards, not the plane crash, but what happened afterwards.
December 5th, when the Stanley Cup, the Conn Smythe Trophy, and the Bill Masterson Trophy were all stolen during a break-in at the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. Luckily, the Stanley Cup was only a replica, but the other two trophies were very real. The trophies were unceremoniously returned just a few weeks later, when the thieves left them in the driveway of a Toronto police officer, after discovering that as far as ransom goes, the trophies were basically worthless. One of the oddest meetings in White House history occurred on December 21st, when Elvis Presley paid President Richard Nixon a visit in the Oval Office. The king of rock and roll dropped in on Nixon to offer his services as an anti-drug spokesman, showing up at the White House gates unannounced. The Secret Service didn't bother to search the king. If they had, they would have discovered the antique Colt 45 pistol Presley carried inside, which he presented to Nixon as a gift. It's good to be king, just for a while. The famous photograph of their strange conversation is the single most requested image from the National Archives. And that's how 1970 ended, with a historic meeting of two rulers, neither of whom would reign much longer. 1971 was right around the corner, bringing the demise of several more musical icons and the conviction of one of the 20th century's most notorious criminals. And Dirty Harry would begin patrolling cinema streets. Geez, the 70s need to lighten up. But that is for next year. Coming soon, 1971.
70s was not a man. 70s was weird. But anyway, that's gonna be the video. That was really interesting. Educational. A lot of stuff I didn't know about 1970s. A lot of stuff happened. 70s was weird. But anyway, if you do like the video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I do appreciate it. I'm sorry for drinking. And your boy Donnie.
Enter the Tekken.